This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. While the mainstream media kept everyone distracted this weekend with the latest royal soap opera, Harry and Meghan's drama, and King Charles is desperately pushing for a deathbed reconciliation with William, happening in another one of King Charles's Commonwealth realms, three of the most powerful architects of the globalist New World Order slipped into Toronto for a private, high-level strategy session. On Friday night, May 8th, Barack Obama, Alex Soros, and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney gathered at a closed-door event hosted by the globalist front group Canada 2020. The perfect warm-up for the full-day 2026 Global Progress Action Summit that kicked off the very next morning. As many have been saying, it was a clear coordination meeting among elites openly plotting their next moves to undermine America and advance their vision of centralized global order. Just to give you some background, the event was co-hosted by Canada 2020, a Canadian progressive think tank, and the Center for American Progress Action Fund, a major U.S. leftist progressive organization that we're going to talk about later on. Organizers called this the world's premier gathering of progressive leaders, thinkers, and change makers with the main goal of helping progressive left politicians win elections, govern more effectively, and defend their warped version of democracy against authoritarianism and right-wing populism.
Those whose politics is to destroy, to demolish, dismantle, they're not going to change their instincts. This is, in many respects, this is their moment, right? We can't match them by being timid imitations of them. We can't answer them by pining for an old order that's not going to return. And the loss of control that people feel that feeds our age of anxiety, it can only be answered by positive action, by building that which comes next.
By pushing the narrative that democracy must deliver real results for everyday people on issues such as jobs, affordability, and security. Still, it's all talk with no action. The plan clearly is to keep open borders, endless foreign wars, and movement forward with big government control and centralized surveillance, utilizing climate change and the environment as the reasons for these broken policies. Not because it's genuinely helping the people and saving the planet. Oh no, this is about these elites making money. Mark Carney says it himself about net zero.
We're going to manage to net zero by 2050. Actually, we're going to have specific targets by 2025 and 2030, so you can measure the short term. They don't say this quite as loudly, but what they're also saying and thinking, and we're going to make a lot of money off of this because actually this is the way the world's headed. I mean, I'm not sure exactly when we get there, but to be carbon competitive is going to be value creating.
But shouldn't we be flying less now?
We should be taking into account the impact of our flying on the planet now. And that's
pushing up the tax on flying.
You push up the tax on flying, you push up the cost on transport, and that's in part what putting a price on carbon is.
This is who the Epstein class is, and this event focused on responding to what they describe as the age of anxiety caused by economic worries, technological changes, and a sense of lost control in a fast-changing world, with the key message that progressives need to take bold risks, build new systems, and figure out a way to survive and try to get back some of that American tax money. So, in other words, they're re-strategizing their evil New World Order plan to continue the erosion of borders, centralize power through these global institutions, and crush populist movements that threaten their vision of this one world governance. We've already seen the games that the World Health Organization is playing with this hantavirus, and Donald Trump's not having it.
What do you think about the handling of the hantavirus by the U.S.?
I think fine.
Do you regret withdrawing from the WHO, given that?
No, I'm glad. So we were paying the World Health Organization $500 million a year. Look, it's a lot of money, but in the overall scope, it's not that much, but it's a lot of money. And we weren't being treated well, and they were making the wrong diagnoses. I was the one that said it came from Wuhan. They didn't say that. They refused to say that because they were totally owned by China. So I was saying it came from Wuhan. They didn't want to say that. Now it's turned out, I think it's been conclusive that it came from Wuhan. But I said that on the first day because I saw satellite pictures with body bags all over Wuhan, literally all over Wuhan. So I said that they lied to me or they didn't know. So we were paying for, let's say, 350 million people. We were paying $500 million a year to the World Health Organization. That's a lot of money. What the hell are they going to do with that kind of money? And China was paying $39 million a year for 1.4 billion people. So I said, you know, you got your story wrong because we should be paying about $10 million, not $500 million. And they were willing to negotiate, but it was so popular when I pulled out. They gave us all wrong information. On COVID, they were totally wrong. And I looked today and I saw the same doctor that was there. He's a good politician. I don't know how the hell he kept his job, but he was there telling us about this. Now, the one thing with this one is that it's much harder to catch. And we've had it for a long, it's been around for a long time. People are very familiar with it. So, you know, I hope it's fine. All I can do is everything that a president can do, which is actually somewhat limited. But it seems like it is not easy to spread. In fact, it's in certain ways very hard to spread. It's been, we've lived with it for years, many years, and we think we're in very good shape. We're very careful. And Nebraska has done a fantastic job. They have a place there that those doctors are unbelievable, the job they've done. Yeah, please.
In short, throughout this one day, panels and discussions covered rebuilding public trust through economic security and helping the middle class, while totally ignoring how their policies fueled the inflation and inequality. They also talked about navigating the changing global order with stronger international cooperation. In other words, we're going to be knocking on China's door. But perhaps the most noticeable, consistent theme throughout the day was addressing AI and digital technology. Perfect for expanded content moderation, censorship, and surveillance. And also bringing up the youth again and supporting an anxious younger generation and the content that they get to see online by bringing in none other than Jonathan Haidt. Now, that name should sound familiar to you because Harry and Meghan have been working with this guy since 2024.
Very nice to meet you on this World Mental Health Day.
Oh, Prince Harry, what an honor to meet you.
Thank you for spending time with me and having this discussion about your book, The Anxious Generation, which, funny enough, aligns very well with the insight sessions that we've been doing with young people in numerous different countries.
So here he is with Mark Carney's wife.
And thanks to everyone for being here. This is, I think, the highlight of my year. Obviously, I was very privileged to be with the President last night, but I think I'm even more privileged today to be with Jonathan, whom I've long admired for all the work he's done before The Anxious Generation and all the work that I'm sure you will continue to do. So we're going to make the most of our time, and I think we're going to assume that most of you in this room know the general tenor of what Jonathan has written about, the problems that we're trying to address, and the kinds of solutions that he has proposed. So I'm going to kind of take that as a given, I hope that's okay, and get into the updated, the response to that, ideas about new bans, etc., and where we think we're going. So that's...
Did you hear what she just said? Ideas about new bans. And she said it so quickly. Listen to it again.
Ideas about new bans, etc., and where we think we're going. So that's, yell now if you don't know what we're talking about, but otherwise that's where we're going. So the book was published, The Anxious Generation was published 2 years ago, has generated a huge response and a huge amount of action. I think we have to commend you for taking on this task. What Were you surprised by the reaction? Are you pleased? Is this kind of what you hoped for?
Yes. Let me just start by saying I'm thrilled to be invited to this policy meeting here in Canada, because one thing I've seen since I wrote The Coddling of the American Mind, I've been working on universities and democracies, is that the internet doesn't care about national borders, but it does care about linguistic borders. And the Anglo countries have really been bound together. A lot of our social problems, a lot of the strangeness on both sides of the political spectrum that's been happening, very similar across the Anglo countries. And the basic finding was that mental health collapsed, especially for girls, right around 2013. And President Obama referred to that last night.
And there it is, folks. Now you understand why Meghan focuses so intently on preteen to teenage girls. So the whole point of doing that is to influence public opinion, and young girls are the most impressionable. Now, it's a known fact that the CIA has used women for many movements. Back in 2010, the CIA used feminism to support the occupation of Afghanistan. Barack Obama was a master at using social media. This is how he won his first election. He was the first president to use social media to influence behavior and drive the outcome of the election in his way.
Was that mental health collapsed, especially for girls, right around 2013. And President Obama referred to that last night. But here's the thing. The collapse was bigger in the Anglo countries than in the rest of the West. So something is going on with the Anglo countries.
I love it how these globalists just sit up there and act as if they have no idea how we got here. Like, who are the people that are responsible for driving all of this fear around this climate hoax? It's these very same people. Who are the people driving these wars? It's the very same people. And who are the people who have launched psychological warfare onto just regular people online? It's these very same people. So they can't act as if, the online algorithms are the ones that are responsible for children now being so messed up. And the frustrating thing about these globalists that want to control every facet of your life is that they never put themselves in a position to be challenged or debated. Like, anybody think that Mark Carney's wife is going to push back? No, she's going to sit there and shake her head because this is the narrative.
And we have similar concerns about civil liberties and free speech. So it's fantastic to have this international...
You notice how quickly this guy gets off the topic of civil liberties and free speech? They all know what they're doing.
Obviously Northern Europe as well, and Southern Europe. Sorry. So we are all in the same boat here, and it's great that we're looking for solutions together. And as for the surprise, yes, I was supposed to write a book on what social media is doing to democracy. That's what I got a book contract for. And President Obama and you talked about some of those dangers last night. And I thought the first chapter was going to be let me just talk about the kids, because I have all this data on the kids that as soon as they got on, they got depressed. And now let's look at democracy. What happens to a democracy when the public square becomes Twitter?
You hear that, folks? His contract was originally supposed to focus on how social media affect democracies, aka elections, okay? What happened in 2023? Elon Musk bought Twitter. And what happened to the censorship complex? They automatically changed their tune to focus on the kids. Listen to what he has to say next.
And the public square becomes Twitter and Instagram. And so I thought I'd write this book quickly, and then I'll get back, in the fall of 2024, I'll get back to the big book on democracy. That's what I thought. What happened instead was that the mothers of the world were desperate to protect their children. They were being told, oh, there's no evidence, oh, we don't know, oh. And then my book came out and said, no, here's what's happening, here's the graphs, here's what's happening to your kids, here's what the founders of the companies said about what they were doing, and here's what we do. And I proposed 4 norms: no smartphone before high school, no social media before 16, phone-free schools, and far more independence and free play. I did that because I'm a social psychologist, and I knew that this is a gigantic set of collective action traps.
So this guy just got done telling us that he is a social psychologist, which means he understands how the human brain works and how people think, as well as what motivates them, as well as what will influence and drive behavior. So given that he has this special skill set, you don't think that he's telling this story to pull on the heartstrings of the audience? Come on. He opens his book and starts writing the first chapter about the children. Give me a break. I've said this 1,000 times over, that using the children and keeping them safe is a front. Because ultimately, what they are trying to do is remove anonymity online. That's what it boils down to. And this guy fully understands that we have civil liberties and free speech, otherwise he wouldn't have mentioned it, and they're being very delicate about it.
And the only way we get out is if we have clear lines, bright lines, we all know it, we all know that everybody knows it, and then you have policy meeting up with the grassroots demand. So once that got going, it was like I couldn't believe it. And I realized, you know what, with my remaining time on Earth, I could bang my head against the democracy problem and, I don't know, maybe we'll make a little progress, or I can work on this and there's change around the world. So it's been really thrilling.
Yeah, I'm sure it's thrilling, especially when there's a paycheck tied to it. Because of course, this guy is tied to several charitable organizations that get paid millions.
What about the pushback? I mean, it's not all plain sailing. Perhaps you can run us through some of the arguments that have been used against your work.
Well, the most stunning thing about the pushback is that there's almost none. There was one article written in Nature by a professor at the UC Irvine that said that I confused correlation for causation. As far as I can tell, she only read the first chapter. She didn't read the section where I specifically said, here's how we know it's not just correlation. So there's that one essay in Nature, and then you'll see a lot of news coverage about how there's this big controversy, and they cite that. That's about it. I mean, there's a couple of other things here and there, but very, very little.
You notice how he doesn't say what the controversy is in the media, which is violating freedom of speech and the First Amendment? That is the biggest issue here.
And so within the academic world, now I don't want to overemphasize that. There are a number who think that I'm wrong, I'm overstating things. But one survey of researchers found that actually 5 or 10 to 1 researchers actually think, yeah, this is hurting kids. So on the academic side, there's been just that little bit of pushback. On the political side, that's the stunning thing. There's been really no opposition.
And that's because who is going to say no to keeping kids safe?
The tech companies are trying to do the tobacco playbook. They spend a huge amount of money supporting internet research centers and fake grassroots organizations. They're trying to make it seem like there's all this opposition. But all around the world, it's been a bipartisan thing because Republicans have kids, Democrats have kids. People who have kids have seen the problem. And so I've been amazed at how little pushback there has been.
Let me know in the comment section if you believe what he's saying here. I think people are just so distracted with so much going on that they're not thinking past how this is going to impact and affect everybody. Like, look at FISA. Nobody thought that FISA was going to be used on American people, right? And now here we are, keeping the kids safe. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm all for it. But not thinking that it's going to affect every single one of us. Like, I'm at the point where these tech platforms have too much power. I mean, seriously, does the world really need Facebook? Do we really need Instagram?
So I think at a general level, from what I've seen, that's correct. But in terms of specifically the idea of bans, so let's talk about Australia, which I think has... they've led the way. I know a number of other countries are in the process and they're thinking through this. Let's talk about what they've done in Australia and the kinds of arguments that are being made against that. It feels to me like the perfect being the enemy of the good in that case. Like, if it's not completely working, then it's not the right thing to do. But is that the right approach?
Yes. So Australia went first. The technology for age verification is getting much better every year. They just said, damn the torpedoes, let's just do it. And the whole plan all along was to start off pretty light, like it's not the government checking ages. They say, you companies, you have to do it. And all the companies complied. And they're mostly using kind of weak methods like YOT, like facial recognition. So the methods are kind of weak for now.
Whoa, hold up. The methods are not secure? He just got done saying they're taking biometrics. What are they doing with that data? Does this not concern parents that these companies or third-party companies are taking your child's biometrics? or your biometrics and being stored somewhere that you don't have any autonomy over? Like this is madness to me. Madness. And we're supposed to believe that the Epstein class wants to keep children safe?
Even still, there's been a 30 or 40% reduction in social media use. That's a very big effect for a law that puts no penalties on the kids. And just yesterday in the New York Times, there was an article by Cass Sunstein, who most of us know and respect, saying, well, Australia is likely to fail because they didn't get to 70% compliance, because that's the magic number in his research. You know, if you get 70% complying, then it'll be self-sustaining, but they're only at 30, 40%. And so I sent Cass a note that said, remember the dictum from Lao Tzu. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but if the first step goes badly, you should quit. Wait a second, I'm not sure about the second part of that. Lao Tzu might not have said the second part, but the people who say that Australia is going to fail say the second part, because they don't take into account the whole idea all along was now that we have it in place, all the companies have complied, compliance is spotty in that the methods are spotty, but now the methods are getting better, so we can hold them to higher standard, higher standard.
I don't know, folks. This doesn't sound like they care very much about the age verification. What they care about is laying this foundation down in order to build this so-called surveillance state. So maybe now the first iteration is not all the bells and whistles, but guess what? Later on, it could be built upon. This is the framework. They've laid the groundwork, and now they can build upon it. And that is the scary part to all of this. That's how he's looking at this.
And it takes a while for norms to change. So I think it's going exactly as we expected. Nobody expected 90% compliance on day 1 or month 3. So I think it's going really well. Now, there are other methods that people will use, but it's a great first pass.
So one of the things he said in that article, that Cass said in the article, was that you needed to give kids incentives. It couldn't all be bans. It couldn't all be negative. We should be giving them concert tickets and this, that, and the other if they get off social media. Does that make sense to you?
Well, he's certainly right that, you know, he comes from an economics and law background. And of course, if people are considering two behaviors and you start putting more obstacles in one and more rewards on the other, of course that's going to shift behavior.
What does that sound like to you when they talk about rewards?
Free fries when you get vaccinated? I got vaccinated. You're saying I could get this? These delicious fries? Wait a minute. But there's also a burger element to this? Let me check with Bill Neathart. Is it too early in the day to eat a burger? No. This can be breakfast? Okay. I want you to look at this and think about, again, some people love hamburgers, some don't. Really want to respect all ways of life. But if this is appealing to you, just think of this when you think of vaccination. Vaccination. I'm getting a very good feeling about vaccination right this moment.
But you have to understand, what Australia was doing was saying, we're heading into unknown political territory. We don't want to put penalties on children or parents. We want to try to do this just by requiring the companies to meet their most basic social responsibilities to children. So that's what there's a deliberate decision to have no penalties on the kids. And what I said to Cass was, but there are so many more ways to add friction. Let's make the going online harder and harder. And that's what's going to happen as the technology is rapidly improving.
What does that remind you of?
You were going to have schools, universities, and colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated. Yeah. Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated.
Thank you. Are all objections to COVID vaccinations ideological bullshit, Dr. Fauci?
No, they're not, and that's not what I was referring to.
Well, that's exactly what you meant when you said making it hard for people to live without getting a vaccination.
But there are so many more ways to add friction. Let's make the going online harder and harder. And that's what's going to happen as the technology is rapidly improving.
You affected people's ability to work, travel, be educated, to actually flourish in American society, to self-determine, as we're all given God-given rights. Shame on you.
Never forget what these fucking people did. And now they want to do this with the internet? Think about how many people need to use the internet and these platforms to earn a living, right? They're now going to make it harder for you in order to earn. So now you're going to have to give up a piece of yourself to the government so they know who you are, so they can watch you. Excuse my language, but all these fucking people need to be put in jail.
Apple and Google have already put out APIs that make it easy for companies like Snapchat to check age. And so it's going to get better very quickly.
Now remember, that little snake, Mark Zuckerberg, wants people to verify their age at the device level, putting the responsibility in the hands of Apple and Google. So before you can even use your device that you've spent a lot of money on, you're going to have to give up your anonymity to let them know that you are of age and you can be going on the internet. Because does anybody really believe that it's going to reduce the harms online? No. Certainly not. I think it more likely will protect the predators. That's just my opinion. You know, I'm all for protecting the kids, but when you have the Epstein class being the one to suggest it, you know, it just doesn't sit right with me. It really doesn't.
I mean, the age check thing has always been completely mystifying because there were, in principle, there was an age requirement, and it never struck me as that tricky, given that one of the things AI is quite good at is actually judging age. Except for me, because it judged me to be like 5 years older than I am, but you know. No, but I mean, it does seem to me, and I think the point that you make in your book, and I think the point that needs to be made repeatedly, is that this technology has emerged in an environment where the companies, they knew what was happening. They were playing on the weaker parts of human psychology, in particular the developing adolescent brain, et cetera. So this wasn't a sort of an accidental outcome. They were trying to get us addicted to these products.
That's right. And that's key for understanding the approach that was taken in Australia. It's what my team recommended, is you don't ban access to YouTube or you don't ban access to information. You focus on the moment of account creation, which is a moment when a child signs a legal contract to give away all of her data and images forever to a predatory company with a gigantic long terms of service, and they'll know everything about you, and they'll use it to, so my question to all of you, if any of you have doubts about whether we should have an age limit, what do you think the age for that should be, to do this without the parents' knowledge or consent?
Well, here's a novel idea. Let the parents decide. And keep social media out the schools, period. No school should be using those apps for school projects or anything like that. Stick to the books, math, science, reading, and that's it. Get back to taking control of your children, because right now what we are doing, we're allowing technology to drive ownership of kids. And that shouldn't be. Take back your children. You yourself get off the damn phone, Meghan.
And the present law in the United States is you have to be old enough to say that you're 13. If you can say you're 13, then you can give away your data and your parents will never know. This is insane. And so don't think about this as we're banning access to information, because kids can still go on YouTube and search for videos on how to kill themselves. We're not doing anything about content.
Like, what is this guy smoking? YouTube is the last place that you will find a genre specifically tailored to unaliving yourself. They're pretty good at removing that kind of stuff. I mean, you can't even say Sleazy E's name without the algorithm suppressing you further. Yeah, and the funny thing, in Australia, the one platform that they're not going after is Blue Sky. Blue Sky, where all of these radical leftist lunatics and a breeding ground for PDFs. I mean, come on now.
But no longer will a kid who says I'm feeling down be fed by an algorithm to the point where the next video is how to kill yourself. That's what we want to stop. These predatory companies, we know what they were thinking, we know what they were doing. It all came out in the law trials in Los Angeles.
Yep, that was the same lawsuit that Harry and Meghan were behind in supporting. You see how all of these people are connected?
So if you focus on contract law and product liability, these are dangerous consumer products. We adults have problems with them, but we assume, okay, adults, you get to make your own decisions. But God damn it, we're not going to let companies put addictive, dangerous products in our kids' hands, and we can't do anything about it. This is insane.
And this is what makes these people so annoying. You have them sitting up there virtue signaling to everyone, telling us what we need to do, but none of them are taking accountability for the role that they played with messing up the youth so badly, especially when it comes to anxiety and the climate fear that they were all injecting when the whole thing has been a hoax. Here we are with a nervous generation, all because you have these greedy globalists who want control.
And so we got to do something. And God bless Australia for saying, we're just going to do it. And of course, innovation is happening.
When you express it like that, it seems extraordinary. And to non-Americans, it's always extraordinary that you're not allowed to drink until you're 21 and you can carry a gun and drive when you're 5 or something. But I mean, when you point this out to people, this sort of the contract, the privacy, the giving away of data, does that sort of, turn the light on for some people? Is that a very effective way to get through?
Well, I think so. Because, it's how you frame it. And of course, Meta is spending a lot of money to frame it as, a ban, and they try to inflame the right with free speech arguments, and they try to inflame the left with the argument that it's a lifeline for marginalized kids. So Meta's working very hard to frame it in certain ways.
Well, that's not entirely accurate. You have Mark Zuckerberg spending money to make it look like he's a champion of free speech, but he is 100% on board in making sure that the operating system is the one who verifies a person's age. Why are you not paying closer attention, John? This is a money-making opportunity for Mark Zuckerberg. He sees that if they have to verify everybody's age, that means all the bots will be gone and you'll actually have eyeballs on those advertisements, meaning more ad revenue dollars coming in. They don't care about the kids. Yeah, have you noticed, since these laws have been put into place, like the online safety bill in the UK back in 2023, have there been any statistics on the amount of children that were saved? No, there's no information on how that online safety bill has helped reduce online harm. And if there is a report, would anybody trust it, considering that it's coming out of the Labour government?
And so I think just showing, wait, this is like the dominant technology in our kids' lives. This is raising our children. And so and the thing is, most people kind of know that. I think the reason why we're winning, why things are moving so quickly, is that most of us know in our gut that something's wrong with this, something's wrong with us, this is just not healthy. And so once you put on a frame like, think about it from a contract law point of view, like people get that, and they say, no, of course you shouldn't have 11-year-olds signing these contracts.
The privacy piece. So one of the arguments against the age verification and holding databases and doing this, that, and the other is always that we open up a new area of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Discuss.
Sure. No, I take that very seriously. My last book, The Coddling of the American Mind, was written with Greg Lukianoff, who's one of the leading free speech advocates in the United States. In The Righteous Mind, my book on politics, I really tried to make sense of conservatives, progressives, and libertarians. I have a lot of friends who are libertarians, very sensitive to those concerns, and those are concerns of everybody. And what Meta is trying to, or what some people are trying to promote, is the idea that those of us who want an age limit, what we really want is a papers, please internet. Oh, you can't go to this site until you show me your papers. Like, no, that has nothing to do with it. This is not about regulating the internet. This is about age limits on a certain category of products that are harmful to children.
Now, this is gaslighting at its finest, because this is absolutely not true. New York State, I can tell you, I've shown you, has a bill currently going through where they want you to verify your age at the device level. Before you can even get onto the internet, you're going to have to give up your information. And this, to me, is like very snake oil salesman.
It's very important that these methods preserve privacy. I think actually what Pornhub says it wants is actually pretty instructive here. So when 1 or 2 states in the US said you have to identify, Pornhub shut down in those states, but they had a big announcement saying, we don't want to have kids. We're fine keeping it to over 18, but we can't do it. unless we get a signal from the device. And so if the device, well, we don't need to know who you are. We don't need to know your age. Just if the device we send a ping down, it says yes or no, over 18, under 18, that's it. And so that's one method. That's called device-based verification. The privacy risks, 0.0. Zero. There's no privacy risk. Pornhub knows nothing about you.
It's like he's pulling these statistics out of his ass. Where are you getting this statistic from? This is so reckless. There's absolutely a privacy risk. Does he not know anything about technology?
Just that the device you're on is one that seems to be for a person over 18. And so especially since most of us parents, we set up the phone, we set up the computer for the kid, we put in the Apple ID if you're on Apple. If we set an accurate age, then we can actually be confident that sites like Pornhub or Snapchat will not be able to serve my child. So that totally respects parental choice, parental rights, and is 100% privacy preserving. So now that there's a market for companies that can do age authentication.
You don't think that kids are going to find a way to get their hands on devices where they have access to the internet? Come on. You see, this is where the age verification argument fails, because once the device is verified as you being of age and it falls into the hands of someone underage, you defeat the whole purpose. See, this is just the stepping stone. They all know that age verification is not going to work, but ultimately they want to get everybody to where you're scanning your retina, your biometrics, to open applications, to be able to access your bank, to be able to go on trips or not be able to go on trips. Like, this is where this can easily lead to. The end goal is this digital ID.
We're going to get the normal process of innovation in a free market society, which is companies are going to struggle and fight and innovate. We're faster and more privacy preserving than them. No more this Yoti face stuff. There's all kinds of methods that involve blockchain or networks of people who vouch for you. I mean, humans are creative, and Silicon Valley is more creative than anybody. So there are a lot of solutions to this that are 100% privacy preserving.
I disagree. I don't trust these people. And you shouldn't either, after what they've all done to us.
I think that was really, I had not thought of that. I mean, the hardware solution. You seem, you're broadly behind. I mean, Australia's doing a good job. It's work in progress is what I'm hearing from you. The other country that's obviously come out a lot on this is China. They have very strong rules, hard limits. They basically, as I understand it, you're not allowed on a certain ages. There's very strong limits. They turn it off at a certain time of night, etc. Any thoughts on that? I mean, different society, how's it working? Are they going to create, are their kids going to be so much better than ours because they are so much more time limited?
Yeah. So I keep coming back to something that my friend Tristan Harris said. He's the founder of the Center for Humane Technology. He said,
Meghan's bestie, Tristan, there he is with her at Time 100 way back in 2020. Sitting there with Marxist race baiter Safiya Noble, author of Algorithms of Oppression, another Aspen commissioner on information disorder with Prince Harry on censoring the internet. These bitches have been at it for a while.
Something to the effect of, these technologies are making authoritarians better authoritarians. China can do stuff that Mao Zedong could never have dreamed of in terms of controlling the population. And these technologies are making democracies worse democracies. We can't tell what's true. We can't do normal policy discussions. It's messing us up. Same thing is happening to our kids.
Well, maybe you need to look at your circle of friends, John, and talk to Prince Harry and ask him why he continues to keep polluting the media space with lies.
The people who made this technology don't let their kids use it, whereas they want our kids to use it.
Easy answer, shut the platforms down. If it's not good enough for the CEO's children, then it shouldn't be good enough for anybody else, period.
And China doesn't let its kid use it, or rather I should say it puts all kinds of restrictions. And then they make TikTok, which is full of garbage for our kids. So yes, these technologies are messing up our politics and our children.
No, it's the people who are messing up the children, because how is the content getting onto the platforms? It's the people. It's the malicious people behind the content messing up our children.
And it's not just the depression and the anxiety, it's the difficulty of paying attention. What will we be as Western society if there are no more books, if nobody reads a book anymore? Brains don't get formed. Deep thinking doesn't happen when all you do is swipe from the age of 9 through the time you die.
Well, then you're a shit parent if you're allowing your child to be scrolling and swiping at 9 years old. Like, what's wrong with you? Part of the issue is the parent. But nobody's saying that. Nobody's calling them into question and holding them accountable. And that's because they want these laws, right? This is not about keeping kids safe.
So, yes, I'm extremely alarmed for the future of liberal democracies because we have great constraints on what our governments can do. And that's kind of the founding idea of Anglo-liberal democracies. But by the same token, we need to, as democratic societies, we need to figure out ways of working. We can't just have a top-down government decree, this is what happens. We have to have civil society, grassroots, parents groups, kids groups. Gen Z groups are getting really active now. They're saying, help us, we don't like this. So this is the big test for us. And if we can't pass this test on social media, where we overwhelmingly agree, and it's completely bipartisan, and it doesn't cost anything, and we can do it, if we can't get this done, then let's just give up on AI, because there's no way we're going to make progress on that.
Humanity is not ready for AI. We're not. Just because there's too much greed and evil in this world that this technology will be used to harm people, if not already. It's unfortunate, but these leftist liberals have shown us that they can't have nice things. They just can't.
I mean, so that was where I was going to go next. Social media is one thing. AI, transforming the way we live, we use it, kids, we use it at school, everyone uses it, but this relationship that people are developing with AI and the different directions in which that can lead you, how do we begin to think about managing that for the kids specifically, for all of us, but for the kids?
Well, I would start by reminding you of the movie The Incredibles. Raise your hand if you've seen The Incredibles. Everyone who has kids has seen The Incredibles. The family of superheroes, they fight this killer robot, and then the killer robot learns, and then they make another one which is much bigger and more powerful. So it's taken us 15 or 20 years fighting this killer robot of social media, which has gotten more and more potent, more and more addictive, more and more destructive. But we're actually we're wrestling it. We're beginning to wrestle it. We're gonna win. Okay. Now AI comes in, 100 times more powerful, changes much faster. It took us 15 or 20 years to get anywhere on social media. If it takes us 5 or 10 years on AI, well, it's going to be a totally different animal in 5 or 10 years. So we have to speed it up. We can't just say, how about we let all our kids have AI sex partners? And let's wait until the scientists figure out if that's bad for them. And that will take 20 years, because it always takes us 20 years to settle anything about media psychology. Does television violence produce violence? We're still not sure, okay? So I don't think our normal systems of waiting until it's proven that a company is causing harm to take action, which takes another 10 or 20 years, I don't think that's going to work for us. And when it comes to kids, we have to be much more protective. So AI relationships, I think that's a pretty clear line. Even character AI, which had, they had a number of induced suicides from their products, they went ahead and said, you have to be 18 to use our product. So I'm not saying that you have to be 18 to use ChatGPT, but of course you can turn ChatGPT into a sex partner if you want. You just have to be clever with prompting, but you can find out how to do that. So we have to put pressure on these companies to at least hold back on the sex for children. Can they at least do that?
I think a better question is, can we stop graping kids first? Let's start there. Let's tackle stopping the normalization of PD files and the sexualization of kids on Netflix. A lot of that has influence on what we see on social media.
And then anything which is explicitly for sex, how about no? How about just an 18-year limit? So that's the easy place to start with AI, is the sexual relationships, and then relationships more broadly. There is every reason to think that if children are trained on human relationships with a sycophantic chatbot that is never annoyed at them, that these children are going to be insufferable to employ or to be parents of.
I won't say anything whether that's true on my kids, but what do you think? So there is the sexual relation piece with the AI chatbots, but there is also, and we had a terrible school shooting in Canada, and it transpired that the perpetrator had been talking to ChatGPT about their plans, had not been reported. Is it, I mean, what's it going to take for these companies? You know, they say they have to protect privacy. They're not going to share this. What's it going to take to get to a place that they are behaving in a way that society believes is reasonable?
Yeah. Well, so here, when we're talking about the behavior of companies, then I think incentives is most of the game. And in the US, what we did with social media was we said, how about if you can do anything you want to anyone and no one can sue you? How about that, we said, because we want the internet to grow. And so that was Section 230. And until February of this year, none of these companies had ever faced a jury. None of them had ever been held liable for the thousands of deaths, the millions of kids who have been damaged until just a few months ago. I think this is going to change their behavior. I think this is the first, I mean, if you say, hey, guess what? You no longer have a perfect shield against hurting people. You actually might be held responsible. And so I think we have to look into this for AI. Now, I don't know what strict liability would look like. I'm not, is it the case that if anybody uses ChatGPT to plan a crime, that Sam Altman or the company is liable? I don't know. But we have to be thinking along those lines, that these companies are creating products, and their incentive is to not lose to the other companies. That's what they're focused on. That's what everything rides on. And while social media companies had to pay back tens or hundreds of millions to their investors, these companies have to pay back hundreds of billions. And so they just don't want to lose. They don't care who they crush along the way. It's going to be years before any lawsuits have to be paid out. So I think in the US, we seem to be incapable of reining them in. Well, no, we just had that first victory finally. But I would look to other countries like Canada to pass laws that make it easier for individuals or organizations or the government to sue for damages. Because these things, yes, they're going to do all kinds of good things, but along the way, they're going to be making bioterrorist weapons for anyone who wants them. I mean, it's crazy what's about to happen. And until there's some liability, they're just going to say, go ahead, take it.
So I'm going to ask my last question, and then there will be mics in the audience, and hopefully, I can't see very well, so hopefully you can organize it. But so my last question is about the kids themselves. Do you feel like the kids are allies in this fight? And what's happening? You've described what's happened in a pretty much unregulated environment. These kids are coming through now into their 20s, et cetera, et cetera. What effect is that? What long-term effect is that having on them and on society?
Yeah. So older Gen Z, they're the ones who went through puberty on Instagram. And that's why the girls were hurt more than the boys. Older Gen Z is actually really jumping into this. They're forming all kinds of organizations. They're trying to meet up in real life. They recognize you only get one childhood. And their childhood was taken from them. They spent it scrolling. They missed it. They've all seen movies that took place in high schools in the 80s and 90s. They know that there used to be a fun childhood, and they didn't get it. So older Gen Z is actually pretty much on our side, and the surveys show that. Surveys, they strongly support an age limit of 16. Now, the 14 and 15-year-olds, no. If you poll them, the majority say don't put an age limit, but actually a lot, but a lot say do put an age limit because they feel trapped. My students say the same thing. I say, why don't you get off TikTok? You say it's ruining your attention. Well, I can't because everyone else is on it. I want to know what they're saying. I don't want to be left out. So when the book came out, it was really parents were the main people I was talking to and teachers. And now it's actually a lot of the older Gen Z. Now, younger Gen Z, they went through puberty on TikTok, so it's a different set of issues. And there, I think it's the attentional destruction is bigger than the depression. Mental health is still huge, a huge cost. But the damage to the ability to pay attention, the loss of reading books, all these things, I think in the long run are going to be even more serious. We have a very, very serious situation. But here's the thing. Wherever you look, almost everyone's supportive. And actually, if I could just add one thing I want to be sure to say to this audience before we go to questions, which is the politics of this. So I've already told you that it's been bipartisan wherever we look. And when I've been outside the U.S., I was in Brussels, I was in Davos. whenever I talk to people about policies and putting an age limit, they almost always say, well, but if we do this, won't Donald Trump raise tariff? Won't he punish us? Because he is, he and Vance are going to defend American companies. But here's the thing. What the right is incensed about, and this is something that progressive policymakers need to really keep in mind, what the right is incensed about is that they feel that the government and the tech companies colluded to shut down their speech during COVID and other things.
But they did. And there it is, the fact that he's acknowledging it, especially since he's friends with Harry, who was doing it to us. They know that what they did was wrong. And they are delicately walking around this because this is the goal, censorship. And it goes back to controlling the information that you get to see and what you can say, which is this cognitive security that they're trying to achieve. Like, stop it. What Harry and Meghan did to people online was wrong.
And there's some truth to that. So they're not entirely wrong. They are totally focused on government regulation that has anything to do with content and who gets to say what and what hate speech, what can you not say. If legislation is going to do that, then you are going to have some strong opposition on the right.
Remember, this guy's a social psychologist. He understands how people think. And he understands that what the government did was wrong. So now they have to frame this narrative so that it isn't alarming. It isn't going to have people defensive and pushing back on it. Ultimately, censorship is what they want. Censorship and control of information.
Okay? But what we're all talking about in the reform movement is design changes. Not content moderation, design changes, like an age limit, like limits on what algorithms can do, like limitations on notifications to children. Also, there's so much we can do that are completely politically neutral, language neutral, they work around the world. So focus on design changes. And one further thing, there are actually some really reassuring signs from within the Trump sort of orbit that a lot of people there actually care about this issue, about kids. So the only piece of legislation we ever passed was the Take It Down Act about non-consensual porn, and that was Melania Trump was behind that. And Donald Trump Jr. tweeted support of COSA, the Kids Online Safety Act. So, if you just be wary about, I'm not saying never do content moderation. Of course, there are sometimes, CSAM, there are certain things that happen, but focus on design changes, and it's incredibly politically popular, and you won't face that opposition.
The design change is all about controlling the algorithms and what you are allowed to see and what you can say. So whether the algorithm suppresses your voice, you still have your free speech, but you don't have free reach, as well as which content they're going to promote based off of whatever they're trying to indoctrinate our children into. Let's not forget that it's Obama who started all of this control and moderation of content on social media shit. Like, how dare these people say they care about children when the United States under Biden lost 400,000 children? Not a peep from these leftist liberal progressives.
Thank you.
I think this is a good place to stop. Tomorrow we'll pick back up with finishing off this video with the question and answers, which is quite eye-opening. But definitely let me know your thoughts below on this one. There's a lot of information. I know it's a lot, but if you made it this far, thank you for sticking it out. Don't forget to hit that like button and definitely share, because this is going to impact all of us. Sooner or later, these people will end up getting us one way or another, or at least they're going to try like hell. But leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
It was such a fraud.